role of the founder and the role of CEO is vastly different. As one myself, I'm excited to learn and share my findings with you. My name is Chris Salvi, host of the show, founder, CEO. I'm excited to learn and share my findings with you. We're here with founder and CEO Ben Van Leeuwen. Very exciting. Your entrepreneurial journey. Let's dive into it. Van Leeuwen Ice Cream.
Yes.
Beautiful thing. Tell me about. I would love to hear about personal stories that may have shaped you as a person. You know, maybe gave you your personality traits, etc.
Personal stories that shaped me
And your brother.
Drove me to do what I'm doing today.
Yeah, very contextual. Like being an entrepreneur is an interesting thing. Takes
I'm going to start with the more literal ones that drove me to, I think, appreciate good food. So I was born in 1984. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. And my father was born in a refugee camp in Jamaica. His parents escaped from the Nazis. And when he was 8 or 9, they moved to Forest Hills, Queens. My mother grew up in a home with 6 kids in Portland, Oregon. And both of my parents, presumably because of their upbringings, I don't know exactly how on my dad's part, but on my mom's part, they came from a family where everything was cooked, everything was made from scratch. There were not processed foods in the house.
Very Portland.
Very Portland, although Portland was not a hipster place in the 1950s. And my dad, I think more on his own, being a New Yorker in the 1970s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, became interested in foods from other countries and cooking at home and Julia Child and the Joy of Cooking cookbook.
Nice.
So I grew up in a household where there were no sugar cereals, there were no cookies in a box. Everything was made from scratch. And by today's standard of what it is to be a gourmand or foodie, it wasn't even close to that. There wasn't talk of where this chocolate was from or where you were sourcing the chicken, but things were made from scratch. And as a kid, I never liked junk food. I wasn't not allowed to have it. It wasn't around a lot, but when I would sometimes get McDonald's or get Chips Ahoy or sugar cereals or soda, I just never liked it. So I think because we didn't eat processed foods at home, because everything was made from scratch, that's kind of what we had a taste for. And that, I think, eventually drove me to want to do what we're doing at Van Leeuwen, which is making ice cream in a really simple way with a lot of cream, a lot of eggs, cane sugar, sea salt. This sounds so like marketing, but that is, because I sometimes wonder, how did I get there? Why did, when I was 23 years old, I decide to start an ice cream company? I'll tell you why I did that. But then why did, when I said, I want to make the best ice cream, why did the best ice cream to me mean tons of eggs, tons of cream, sugar, sea salt, good flavoring ingredients and nothing else? Why? I think because my palate wanted not processed foods, didn't want additives, because I wasn't used to those.
Interesting.
And then I think entrepreneurially, my dad is an entrepreneur. He's 81 years old, and he's still starting new businesses. So seeing him start businesses, since I can remember.
What types of businesses?
The first thing my dad did, as he tells us, when he was 14 years old, was sold fireworks that he bought in Chinatown to the kids at his school in Forest Hills, Queens.
That's a good one.
The second business he did was when he was 17 years old, he took his bar mitzvah money, as the story goes, and he convinced what is now called British Airways to charter him a few planes, and he sold the seats and did chartered flights to Europe and put, wealthy college kids in New York City onto planes to go to Europe for the summer. So he was always a hustler in that way. After that, he started an advertising agency and travel software. So he did a lot of different things. but being around that, I never thought that I'd work with him or even go into business with him. But I think seeing that, you say, oh, I could maybe do that too, because he is really good at taking an idea and then bringing it to life.
Yeah. Are there any specific types of traits? He must be resourceful, creative, he takes initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I think for being an entrepreneur, whether it's for him or anyone who's doing it and being successful in it, or even just getting something off the ground, it's having a positive attitude. And when something goes wrong, keeping that positive attitude and getting through it. That to me is the only reason when people say, good work on Van Leeuwen. I'm so impressed, and I say, thank you. We sell ice cream. We sell good ice cream. Other people do that. Some people are more successful. Some are less successful. Why are we successful? Why have we gone from a single food truck that I bought off eBay for $5,000 and retrofitted into an ice cream truck to, almost 70 corporate-owned scoop shops selling to 12,000 grocery stores and, 1,200 employees. By this summer, we'll have close to 2,000. Why did we do that? How did we do that? And it really, to me, comes down to the positive attitude because it's hard. And what we're doing isn't brilliant. It's not rocket science. I'm sharp. I'm not a genius, though. But it's just saying when something goes wrong, get through it, And I think it's a combination of, obviously, if a big thing goes wrong, you got to get through it. But it's also saying all those little things that you just try to do a little bit better of a job on. Yeah. They add up to something great. With our store design, with our product, there's always places you can cut cost. So you might look at a product or a store design and you say, okay, I want to shave 10 or 20% off the cost. And you look at, 5 or 10 different things you can do. Cut here, cut here, cut here. And if you look at those things individually, you might say, if I change the door handles on the store from, this beautiful custom brass to this, it's not going to make a difference, and it won't make a difference. But I think it's the collective of doing all those things that makes a big difference. So I think the success, the attitude you were asking about that kind of, I think, makes you successful. In anything you do, it's like an attention to detail, and that attention to detail only works if you have a good attitude. Because if you're not, feeling positive, how are you going to get through a tough time?
Do you think there's an element of things you experienced throughout your life where it was the right amount of challenges to be able to stay positive?
You mean before we started Van Leeuwen?
Yeah. What built up this the right amount of?
I mean, we were not ever given money or given things that we wanted. We always had to earn our own money. So I think I started working as soon as I could. When I was probably 10 years old, doing yard work in the neighborhood. When I was 14, working at restaurants that would hire me. So that wasn't necessarily challenging, but it taught me the value of $1. I mean, as cliche as that sounds, I had to earn money if I wanted to buy candy from the candy store. I had to earn money if I wanted to buy a cool new mountain bike. I had to earn money that I used to pay for college and spend at college. So I think that's really important. And that wasn't challenging, but it just built a work ethic in myself and all my siblings. But I really think a lot of it's attitude and nature, what I was saying, keeping a positive attitude. What I found, which is maybe a little bit out there and hard to explain, but your happiness is so much from within, and and I'll give an example of Van Leeuwen Ice Cream. When we started, we had one truck, and after a year or two, I thought maybe we could open a store. And if we could open that store, we'd have a place to store the cups and cones that we need on the truck, and we'd have this headquarters, and I just can't imagine feeling prouder, feeling more accomplished than if we could have one store. Then when we got one store open, we dreamed about having 3. and then the number became 10. And this is ambition. That
Yeah,
I
yeah.
described.
Where's that come from?
Yeah, and that comes from by the time we got to 10 stores, then we wanted to have 20, and we wanted to be in not 100 grocery stores, but 1,000. And when I look back and when I try to remember my feeling of positivity and feeling of accomplishment, it does not change. It is no greater today as we are marching towards 100 corporate-owned scoop shops and 2,000 employees than it was when we had one store and we're marching towards 3, or when we had one ice cream truck. And that's what I bring back to just the attitude and outlook. And I'll say too, if I'm not taking care of myself, like if I'm not sleeping well or not getting enough exercise, or just sort of, not looking after my mental health, like everything that's not perfect in our business will suddenly look horrific. And even though I think by any standards, it's impressive what we've accomplished with this business, I will truly in moments feel like this is so bad what we've done, nothing's working, nothing's good. And I know that's absurd, but my point here is it's so much within.
Yeah.
It's so much with, like, the happiness comes from within, to a degree, right? Because my point is everything we've done is at very least pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't
Very
feel
good.
any better getting to 100 stores than it is going from 1 to 2.
So it's given you what wisdom? The journey? It's about the journey?
The journey, yeah. Laura, my co-founder and best friend's father, says it's not making them. It's not having the money that's fun. It's making the money. And what he means by that, it's the journey.
Yeah.
And that is a lesson that did hit me, and I don't stick to it in terms of keep it in my consciousness at the front all the time. But like 4 or 5 years ago, I had, for the first 12 years of the business, been waiting for what I call the smooth sailing to start. Well, once we get here, and once we hire this person, once this department materializes into a real thing, then I'll just be able to do the things I like and nothing will go wrong. And when I realized that's never going to happen, that was actually very freeing. In saying, this is really hard. No matter how big we are, the challenges are going to change. I don't know about refrigerators breaking anymore. I don't hear about it. They break, they get fixed. If I was totally in charge, they'd get fixed for a better price, but I'm not anymore, and that's okay. So the problems get bigger, of course, but yeah, just sort of like accepting it and enjoying it and not waiting. Because I think that waiting and trying to like get to the end, it's like when you're going on a hike, like getting to the top of the mountain's really cool, but like so is the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're not doing it just to get to the top.
Yeah, every step is supposed to be enjoyable.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about this because we want, I still, even though I'm saying all of this to you now, I still believe foolishly that once I get here, then I'll feel a different kind of happiness.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the journey is underrated. And to relate to it, I feel like I struggle with that, where I think there's like this next thing that happens, and it does happen. And then it's like, well, then I'm just anxious or
it's the opposite of being in the present.
Yeah. Which is not good, because we live one time.
Yeah. My happiest moments are making ice cream and serving ice cream.
Yeah.
That is it. Truly, truly. Because you're like, as obvious as this sounds, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the point of everything we're doing.
Yeah.
It works because there's nice people working in the scoop shops, scooping ice cream that tastes good, and people find joy in getting that ice cream. And being a part of that is when I say, oh yeah, this is great. And I don't do it enough.
So I'm gonna
do it more.
So I'm gonna label you, after that comment, I'm gonna label you as a product CEO. You're obsessed with the product.
100%.
Yeah. It goes back to the food, your early life experiences of high quality food from scratch, and I also noticed, also read about your experience of in high school was the first ice cream venture. You made some cash. you went to Europe and Southeast Asia and experienced more culture and more food. Can you tell us about that experience and the impact it had on
Absolutely.
on
So
Van Leeuwen?
I was a senior in high school. It was April. I was looking through the local newspaper in the classifieds for a summer job, and I saw an advertisement that said something along the lines of drive an ice cream truck, earn $500 a week.
Yeah.
I was, if I remember correctly, I was most excited at the prospect of earning $500 a week. This was in 2002. So
That's pretty good.
that was really
For-
good,
yeah.
especially for someone living at home, right,
Yeah.
who didn't have many expenses. I replied to that ad. I ended up running a Good Humor ice cream truck for 2 summers, only 2 summers. The first one, I did it on my own. The second year, we got 2 trucks, and my brother Peter, who's now
Yeah.
my co-founder, along with Laura at Van Leeuwen, we ran 2 trucks, and we sold novelties, so prepackaged ice cream bars, ice cream sandwiches, popsicles, Haagen-Dazs bars sometimes, and I loved it. I mean, I loved every bit of it because I love the food, I love the product, but I also love hospitality.
Yeah.
Like I truly find joy in serving people, which is not a you know. There's a lot of like the religions, most religions. I'm not very religious, but they center around service, around serving people. And they say that's how you find true joy and happiness is in serving others. And when you're doing that, and it's quite easy. You go work in an ice cream shop, you go work in a restaurant. I worked in restaurants before I started Van Leeuwen as a server from the age of 18 to 23, right before we started Van Leeuwen. And I truly loved it. And it wasn't that, because they weren't my restaurants, right? I was just an employee, but I absolutely love serving people because it makes people happy and you feel good and you're on your feet. So that experience of driving the ice cream truck in Connecticut, did I learn about business? Yeah, I mean, a little bit. The margins, but that stuff's pretty simple.
What's the hard stuff?
The hard stuff is like executing. In our business, the most challenging thing is executing product and service in the scoop shops. What brick and mortar operator like me wouldn't say, I want to provide great service to every guest, right? Everyone wants to do that, right? And it's challenging. And for us, that's a process that will never end, but it is not an intuitive process. It is not done by being a nice founder. It is a highly technical process that takes tons of work and requires a great retail operations team with great training programs and HR. And, it's so much more complex than let's hire nice people and be nice to them. And that's the core.
That's a challenge, though, too, within itself, right? Is filtering the right people.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you got to train them.
And I mean, something we say in interviews is, and you have to constantly remind people of this, but they have to smile. They have to smile. And it's okay if you don't smile. Not everyone's meant for, customer-facing stuff. But we say, like, if you're interviewing for a job and you're not smiling, it means maybe you're not a smiley person. But you need to be smiley. And if you have to make an effort to smile, you're going to be exhausted, right?
Yeah.
And you have to work all day. So we need people who are just naturally engaged. And again, it's not for
Social
everyone.
people.
Yeah. Because we want them to be happy too, right? And if you're not happy smiling at people and being nice, then you have to, you probably won't be happy working at Van Leeuwen. But I think the biggest thing is supporting them. And that's the part that's, less intuitive. It requires great training. It requires great HR support. And it's more tactically, it's like, how do we make their jobs as easy as possible? New York City passed a bill that said you have to accept cash. We had stopped accepting cash. The team didn't want to count cash. The team didn't want the security risk of, on a January night when maybe only one person's closing in a quiet neighborhood, you're counting like thousands of dollars. So we said no more cash. But the city came after us, and we ended up spending a lot of money to put reverse ATM machines into every store, which allow us to comply with the rule, but means the team doesn't have to then worry about cash. So our thing is like, let's take away as much of the sort of boring work we can from them so they can focus even more just on guests and on each other, and enjoying themselves, on having fun.
Side note on that, we interviewed Michael Osanlu, who's the CEO of Portillo's, and he talked
awesome.
about how they wanted to listen to what they implemented and executed on. They listened to the field workers, if you will, in-store people. Everything they didn't want to do, they outsourced. So and it significantly improved their day-to-day.
Everything they didn't want to do, they outsourced.
Or they tried to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like some of the, maybe some of the more nitty-gritty stuff. So they outsourced a lot of the work. So they could focus on smiling, giving the little quips and funny lines that they give while they're delivering the food. I digress. Let's go into the early days. Let's go into the early days. Eyes wide open, optimistic, which I know you've stayed, but
Yeah, early days.
Yeah.
In a way, the early days were easy financially because there was like no overhead. We had 2 ice cream trucks and there were 2 part-time employees and we did everything else. So we were super profitable the first 2 years. We probably had like a 60-70% EBITDA. Something
Oh, wow.
I could only
Nice.
dream of that. That's like tech,
Yeah.
right? No one does that. And that wasn't sustainable though, because that required us to work, 70 hours a week. And I remember saying, why would I ever hire a bookkeeper? I can do it myself. Not in a million years would I hire anyone to do this. I can do it, And then the moment we hired a bookkeeper, it gave us time to go source real estate, and we started opening scoop shops. So those early days, those first 2 years, cash flow wise, were easy. It got really stressful after 2 years. It was our second or third year in business, and we kind of ended the year with I think $700,000 or $800,000 in cash, which was great. That was our bookkeeping was okay, but it wasn't that sophisticated, and there was absolutely no cash flow forecasting. So I said, cool, that's probably enough money to build like 3 more trucks and open 3 stores. And I was a little off with the forecasting. Cash flow forecasting is so complex still. It's super hard, and it is not intuitive. We ended up running out of money, and we saw, this was crazy. This was great fortune, great luck, whatever you call it. Chase Mission Small Business. They were giving away $250,000 to 12 small businesses. You applied for the grant. It was really popular. It was advertised a lot. And we wrote a proposal and got enough people to like the Facebook post, which was a requirement. And out of 74,000 applicants, we won. And this $250,000 was like the exact delta on what we needed to stay alive. So I remember it was like February or March when the check came, but it was like in the nick of time. And it
That's
wasn't
awesome.
all smooth sailing since then. I remember many, many winters we would have payroll coming. I'm going to make this up. Maybe it was $8,000. And we'd have like, $4,000 in the bank. And we'd each have like $1,200 in our personal accounts. And we knew that there were like 3 scoop shops and 5 trucks with like, $300 in change. And they could probably survive with $50 in change. And we'd drive around emptying every cash register, emptying our personal accounts, and we'd make payroll. And we never missed payroll. So it required so much hustle. Because when I look back, it was very simple work. It was grunt work. Okay, get the cash. We know there's cash in these 9 places. We know we'll make it back in the next 2 weeks and we'll probably be okay. But what would have happened if we missed payroll? How would that have spiraled? So it's these like teeny decisions, because I was talking about before, each one seems fairly small. Like, is missing payroll once? We've been in business for 17 years, the end of the world. Sure doesn't seem like it, but we never did, because what would that have caused? So I'm just bringing this up as the attention to detail, the hustle, the non-brilliance. There's no genius in this. We're in the food business. It's low margin. So I really think success is determined by making more good decisions than bad decisions, and figuring figuring as many things out that you think are about to go wrong or that are going wrong, and just never saying, well, this one doesn't matter, this one doesn't matter, because when you add them all up, they matter. And this is me trying to figure out, how has this worked, right? Because the margins are thin, right? I sometimes see food businesses fail, and you hear people say, oh, it was mismanagement, it was this, it was that. It's such a thin margin business that I can never sort of be the one saying, you should have done that. I'm like, I don't really know. It's so tight.
Yeah.
It's super tight.
You'd
I
have
can't
to know
say
it
that
really
you made
well.
a terrible decision or not.
Yeah. So you go from a couple of food trucks, first scoop shop. When was the moment where you're like, okay, like we're really getting going here. We got a business.
The moment was there were a few. There were a few like times that it felt like there was a step change.
Level up.
Where, yeah, we were really leveling up. One of those times is right now. I think the first was when we had opened, we were up to like close to 10 stores, and the financial stress was still a thing every winter. We got through it, but it was just so stressful. And we said, okay, let's take investment. Let's sell a little bit of equity, put some more money into the company. And we did that, and it allowed us to open more stores. It also allowed us to do the most important thing we've ever done, which is build a team, and bring people in who were good at the things that we weren't. So certain operational things, HR things. Part of it was just bandwidth. We needed more people, but we also needed different skill sets. So that was in 2018 that we did our Series A financing. We raised $5 million. By 2020, we were out of money. We needed more, but doing really well. So it was fairly easy to find capital.
2020 as in post?
2020. No, this was like end of
before?
2019 that we started the
Okay.
raise. We closed our Series B round in February of 2020. I was really nervous about the coming pandemic, more nervous than the sort of market was at that point. So we closed a Series B round, which was okay. We put another 14 million into the business, and then it was like time to put the pedal to the metal. Then the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we renovated our manufacturing facility in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. We spent $4 million on that.
Wow.
We started burning cash on payroll because we didn't lay anyone off during the pandemic. We also didn't close a single ice cream shop.
You didn't lay anyone off?
We didn't lay any, I should correct that. I think 12 people who were, I think, like students and were kind of okay taking a break for the winter anyways were laid off, but every store was kept open.
Good for you guys.
We kept doing deliveries, and scoop shop sales were down 80%, which we said, that is so much better than being down 100%. And it's so much easier to not have to reopen those. So we put this money into the company. The pandemic hits. A mistake that we made was, what we should have done then was said, let's go sign 20 leases for great deals and start doing construction. Construction prices hadn't gone out yet. Instead, we pulled out of a few leases. We pulled way back on that. And we're fine, right? But that's a regret. I wish I had. I mean, of course.
It's hard to make decisions in that moment, especially as a brick and mortar.
But right now, I mean, I always decide on how much we want to grow based on a few things. One is capital, but that's sort of the least important because there's capital out there where you can find money if you have a good plan. Two is bandwidth of team, like how fast can team go. But three, for me, is like the more complex one. It's like, is the brand in a position where it's good enough to open 100 stores? Meaning, I think because of the age of our brand, and the age of our brand since we really started scaling like 5 years ago, because it's kind of new, we're evolving so rapidly. So, for example, we're opening a store in Mary Brickell Village in Miami. The development's going really slowly. We designed the store like 14 months ago, and that design, it's a good design, but our store design has evolved so much that we're already going back now and we're saying, actually, let's bring in a new architect. Let's redesign that because we think we can make an even better store.
Mm-hmm.
So part of how we decide, okay, could I get the capital to open 100 stores in 2026? I think I could. I mean, would it be super easy? No, it's 50, $60 million, but I think I could get it. I think we could put a team together to do it. But I don't want to open that many stores because I know that design is going to keep evolving, and no matter what, like, we wouldn't be good, entrepreneurs if it wasn't this way. No matter what, every 2 years we're going to look back and be like, why'd we do it that way? Why'd we do it that way? So in a way, I want to do less, so what we have is closer to exactly what we want.
Yeah.
Product you can keep changing. Store design you can't, right? It's very
more
expensive to redo that.
Especially the more stores you have.
Yeah.
How often do you go into the stores?
Probably like 4 to 5 times a week. I mean,
Nice.
almost every day.
How much ice cream do you eat?
Not so much. I mean, maybe a pint a week, pint and a half.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially,
I mean, I'm careful about it.
Yeah.
I'm around it every day.
yeah. Back to the trajectory.
Yeah.
The trajectory. So, where are you at now?
Right now, we are at 67 corporate-owned stores. We have 6 more opening in 2024. We have 35 planned to open in 2025, so we'll get to over 100,
Nice.
which we're very excited about. And then kind of step that up through 2030, so 35 to 42 to 50 to 60 to 70 per year. Also exploring international franchising, which I'm super excited about for obviously the business growth, the revenue, but also from a product localization standpoint. If we go to certain Asian countries, we will sell a lot of what we're already selling here, but it'll give us an opportunity to make cool flavors for those markets that might not sell as well here, which is fun for us. And also, I think innovation and product development's our core competency, so we really want to do that.
Product CEO.
Product CEO,
Yeah, you have these very interesting flavors. And I could see you being very excited about the menus abroad. Actually, I'm going to pivot into this. The juxtaposition between the founder and the CEO role. And, you're merging them. And, I talk about it a lot of ways, like the founder is an innovator, and the CEO is the one who commercializes.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you balanced it? Do you feel like more than one or the other? What do you think about that? Applying it towards yourself.
I mean, I think for a business like this, you kind of need a founder CEO. Business like this defined by, we're not big by American standards. We're probably a medium-sized business now, but we're growing rapidly with enough capital, but we're not, made in the shade there. So it requires so much incredibly complex decision making, balancing growth, innovation, quality, and I think being the founder and CEO, having obviously a lot of skin in the game equity wise, but also skin in the game just pride wise. This is
your
a
baby.
business we started 17 years ago. Helps us to make decisions, and I think you could find a career CEO who could do this, but I think it's much harder, to make decisions that sometimes you take a short or medium term profit hit to do something that is better in the long term. An example was our product is very high in butterfat and egg yolk, so we use a lot of cream and eggs, which the 4 ingredients you make ice cream with, or I should say good ice cream, are milk, cream, eggs, sugar. The cream and eggs are many multiples more expensive by weight than the milk and sugar. So the more cream and eggs you use, by a lot, the more expensive the product gets. This year, in 2024, cream and egg prices skyrocketed. They're actually still going up. And our supply chain team came to us and said, guys, they're going up. This is going to decrease our profit margin by over 25%. Not 25 points of profit on the revenue, but our margin was
profit,
going to
yeah.
decrease by 25% of what it was. And they said, but we have a solution. We can reduce our butter fat and reduce our eggs and make up for like half of it. And if we do those reductions, we're still going to be higher butter fat and higher eggs than Haagen-Dazs, than Ben & Jerry's, so we'll still be a better product. And they said, so let's do this, and let's do a sensory where we do a blind taste test and see if people know this. And I think my decision was right. I said, no way, we're not touching the product. And someone, actually my brother Peter, and we disagreed on this, but he came around, he said, but let's do the sensory. And I said, we can't do the sensory. I said the sensory, where it's sort of a blind taste test, people are going to taste this, and it's going to taste great because all ice cream is good. I mean, virtually all ice cream is good.
Yeah.
And then when we're doing the same thing in 5 years and bringing our butter fat down even more, after we've done it 2 more times, suddenly we're not going to have a distinctly high quality product anymore. When you chip away at the quality, chip away. Because you can chip away in a way that's not noticeable until it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until, you say, what happened to Van Leeuwen? They used to be so good. And I can say that about, like, Haagen-Dazs, which I like, and I might be wrong on this, but I think the butter fat has come down over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and I still like it, but I don't like it as much as I used to when it was a higher butter fat. So we said, no, we're going to take that hit, and we're going to keep our butter fat there, we're going to keep our egg yolks there. But that, I would define that as like a really complex decision to make, because it sort of hurts you in the short term, maybe, because I don't think sales would have dropped. That's the thing. Even if we had changed it, I guarantee you nobody would have said, oh my God, I noticed this. But it's that slow degradation.
Yeah, you do it again, and then
Yeah, and it's that like slow degradation of quality, which I think it could really hurt your business. And then it hurts your business, and a new CEO comes in and says, oh, we have to improve things, let's make it better again, and then you have to re-educate the consumer. So we've just really like stuck to our guns for 17 years on let's make really good vanilla ice cream. And when we went into Whole Foods in 2008, I think we were doing about $6,000 a month with Whole Foods in the Northeast.
Nice.
And another $3,000 a month in other wholesale. So our wholesale was about $100,000 a year for our first couple of years. It was nothing. We are making the same vanilla ice cream that we sold to them almost 17 years ago, and we have about 35 SKUs in Whole Foods, or will by this spring, and we're the number 1 ice cream in Whole Foods after their house label, after the 365 brand. And I bring that up it sounds like marketing, but I guess the point is, like, I think that's only the case because we've made these really simple products. Vanilla ice cream, there's 5 other super premium makers who do it, and it's 20% less than us. There's 30 other ice cream brands that do it at economy or just premium level that's 50 to 70% less than us. So how is Van Leeuwen working after 17 years? The quality, that's it. And
everyone says Van Leeuwen is the best.
When I think being a founder CEO is what's helped us stick to that and say, nope, we can't move that one. That one's got to stay.
Will Van Leeuwen go on without, ideally it continues to go on without the founder CEO, right?
That's the idea.
There's only so much time in life.
You set it up.
But how do you keep the quality intact?
I think you need to prove that that's important. And I don't know. I actually don't know because I've never sold a business and seen what happens after. But the story I'm telling right now, I think, is a really compelling investment strategy to invest in a great product and just keep it that way, and do not change it. The markets move, commodities move. You have more profitable years, less profitable years. But to me, that Whole Foods story, and best-selling ice cream and Sprouts too, these are not trendy products. This is vanilla, this is strawberry, this is chocolate, this is cookies and cream. These are classic products that everyone's making. I think we're doing them a little better, which is defined by more eggs, no stabilizers, more cream. So how do you ensure that? You just, I guess, successfully tell the story of why that makes the business better and maintains consistent and growing revenue.
So what's the future hold? What's your vision? beyond?
My vision is, in terms of specific growth, it's to get to like 400 or 500 stores, corporate owned in the US by 2030. So be in, probably 30, 40 states by then. It's to expand internationally, either through joint ventures or franchise agreements with partners in some of the Gulf states, in Korea, in China, in potentially some European countries. It's to continue expanding wholesale. And then what will make all of that possible is continuing to innovate. So what I'm most excited about in the short term is this March we're opening Van Leeuwen Flavor Lab, and it's our research and development headquarters. And it's a R&D kitchen, and in front of that R&D kitchen is a tasting room and meeting room during the day. And then in front of that is a Van Leeuwen Ice Cream shop. So everything's connected. So we're connecting R&D, not in sort of a Disney World way where it's like a pretend R&D kitchen. This is where our entire commercialization team and myself will sit and work every day. So we'll be able to commercialize products and be selling them, sometimes within minutes, which gets us real customer feedback, which I think will help us launch even more successful products. Because, one thing I've learned, which is, I guess it's a phenomenon, it sounds so obvious as I'll say it, but the data you get from making a lot of ice cream samples and sitting around a table internally, or even bringing in outsiders to taste, it's sort of what I said before, all ice cream is good. That data is, I believe, almost worthless. People are going to say, this is good, this is good. They're going to get feedback. They're eating free ice cream. The moment you truly commercialize something and put it in the market, even if it's in one store, and then you put a picture of it on Instagram and tell people it's for sale, the data you get there is incredible. So in August, we started a sort of soft launch of the Flavor Lab program, where once a week, I, with my commercialization team, make 5 to 10 gallons of ice cream, one flavor, and we put it in one store in Brooklyn and we post it on Instagram. The moment we started doing that, we got incredible feedback. And when I say incredible feedback, I mean incredibly valuable feedback on Instagram. When we launched a flavor that would do well in the store, its engagement on Instagram was so high, and it was directly related. So suddenly we learned, whoa, just putting it on Instagram, but telling them it's going to be for sale, kind of shows you how it's going to do almost even more powerfully than being in the store. But it had to be real. You had to truly be doing it to sell. And this Flavor Lab's going to drive even more innovation, which will allow us, I think, to do well expanding here and then expanding internationally and continuing to expand into wholesale. Because it's pretty simple. Like, what we're trying to do is make another vanilla, make another honeycomb, make another coffee affogato. I'm listing flavors that are hits. And it's hard to make a hit.
Yeah. So you're always searching for the hit.
Always searching for the hit. And it's so hard, and you don't know if it's a hit until it hits the market. And then you see.
How about when it's a stinker?
Like, how about, like, what do we do? Or
You just get it out as quickly as possible. What indicates it?
when it's a stinker, we get it out as quickly as possible, which I think we've overdone, and I think we've made mistakes there. So an example would be passion fruit layer cake, a beautiful passion fruit custard. So fresh frozen passion fruit puree from Peru, blended into a rich custard of cream, eggs, milk, cane sugar, with homemade vanilla layer cake and caramel frosting. It was an incredible flavor. The people who loved it were crazy about it. Our friends still say, why'd you discontinue that? It sold really poorly. But sometimes you want our VP of marketing calls it like the yellow shoe. Like, you put a yellow shoe in the front of your shoe store, and people see it and they come and they never buy the yellow shoe, but it gets them in the door. So I think, yes, we do discontinue stinkers, but the stinkers are always really good. It was the passion fruit layer cake. I believe we're about to discontinue the lemon poppy seed muffin.
Someone's going to be upset about that.
Oh yeah, because these are great flavors. So I think that's another complex decision. If the P&L on a product is bad, that product might be driving other sales, right? It might be driving interest in the brand.
That's hard to tell. I
Really
liked
hard
your
to tell.
I liked your analogy or story of the yellow shoe because no one buys yellow shoes, or it's
Right.
not really, but
But it
so-
might bring them in the door.
right.
Yeah.
So how can you tell? Yeah, that's good. Let's pivot to some kind of general entrepreneurial type of questions, like who do you get advice from?
Makes me sound so foolish if I don't have like a list of people who I get advice from. So a lot of peers. So we're in two distinct businesses. One is CPG, one is the brick and mortar scoop shops. So on the scoop shops, we are friendly with a lot of other, restaurateurs. The quick service is what's more relatable to us. So Nick, who's the founder and CEO of Just Salad, another Nick, who's the founder and CEO of Bluestone Lane. I could probably name a dozen, but talking to the people like this, spending time together, sharing resources, even in terms of real estate.
Yeah.
Hey Nick, I saw that you have a store in this part of Illinois. How's it doing? It's doing great. Okay, we'll go there too. That's sort of peer-to-peer advice. On the CPG side, that's one that my brother Peter is more involved. I am very involved, but he's more involved with that than I am. And then on just sort of like the general business advice, our investors have, in the last 2 years, connected me to Cliff Burrows, who was a very high up guy at Starbucks. And he is a great resource. And the first piece of advice he ever gave me was amazing. He had never been to our ice cream shop, but we were having a call, and he went to our ice cream shop at Rockefeller Center. And we used to, and we still have these signs up, at all of our ice cream shops on the outside, it said, vegan ice cream, vegan ice cream, ice cream. And we thought, we're going to say that because we make vegan ice cream and regular ice cream. And Cliff said, Ben, I went to your store. The ice cream was great. The service was great. The store looked nice. But until I got up to the counter, I thought you were a vegan ice cream shop. And I said, well, why? He said, well, it said vegan ice cream. I said, well, no, it said vegan ice cream and ice cream. And now it's so obvious. He said, no, people just read vegan ice cream. So these are the things that, like, when you're a veteran in brick and mortar retail, it's just so obvious. And I find often the best advice is so obvious. And once you know it, you're like, of course, of course, of course. And yeah, I think that's all I've got there. Probably more. I'm sort of, that one, it's hard to answer.
How about...
Wait, sorry, I'm going to answer that once more. So the question was like, who do I...
Yeah, who's giving you advice? And what advice are they giving you?
I think the who's giving you advice is important. I try to say yes to as many meetings as possible. And often you learn at least one thing. So networking, having coffees, whether it's investors, whether it's operators. I usually learn the most from operators because we're all in the trenches doing the same stuff together.
Yeah. That's good. How about a founder, CEO, business person that you admire?
Founder, CEO, business person that I admire. Yvon Chouinard, Patagonia. I've never met him. I've listened to him on podcasts. Part of why I envy him, though, is that he owned, before he gave it away, 100% of his company, which I thought was so cool.
Yeah.
But they were growing in the 80s when it was really easy to get debt. Expensive, but easy. And a more sort of relevant founder, CEO who I admire right now, Howard Schultz, Starbucks. What they do, I think, is incredible because it's a product that they do a good job of. But let's be honest, there's cafes that are making better coffee than Starbucks, right? And Starbucks is pretty expensive. But what I see Starbucks doing is delivering so successfully on like amazing service. And amazing service and amazing environment. Their stores become more and more beautiful. And as we were talking about before, I think that's so challenging. And I think it starts at the top. And he's been really successful in because you feel it in the stores. People are really nice there.
Let's. What about a piece of advice? Their new CEO. His name is Nichols. What's it? Nichols, right?
I think
Something
so,
like
yeah.
that. What advice would you give him?
Without knowing, that much about Starbucks business, and they're 1,000 times the size of us, spend time in the stores. Spend a lot of time in the stores. Spend almost all your time in the stores. All the answers are in the stores. That's where all the business is happening. That's what makes it work or makes it not work. And from what I heard, when Howard Schultz was the CEO, he spent 80% of his time in the stores.
Wow.
That's pretty much all he did.
Wow. What's your day to day?
Totally depends. A lot of real estate now because we're expanding,
Yeah.
and it's so important to decide on where to invest capital to open stores. So a lot of real estate, a lot of product development, tasting, and scoop shop visits, which is just what I was talking about. Now the challenge for me though is a week can very easily pass where I only spend like an hour in the stores, just because of I've been in Chicago the last 2 days. Next week we have budget meetings every day. The next week I actually think I'll come back to Chicago because there's so much to see here. So
It's great to have you.
Yeah. No, my day-to-day changes rapidly, and I'm constantly asking myself the question, like, what should I be doing? What's the most effective thing for me to be doing? The store visits is the hardest. It's the hardest to define the value in, right? I go to a store, I work with the team, I scoop ice cream for 2 hours. I mean, you could argue that that's a terrible use of the CEO's time. Yet when I do it, I think I get my best ideas. I feel happiest, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for the person running the company to actually feel good, and to be relaxed and to be happy and to be inspired.
It gets permeated throughout the organization.
Totally. So, as I'm saying this now, I'm like convincing myself, I'm like, just do it. I think the enemy of that is trying to be too rational and saying, no, this Hollywood idea of the boss is someone, sitting at a desk signing papers, in a suit and on the computer. And it's like, I barely open my computer anymore. I use my iPhone for emails. I'm on the ground, I'm moving around, I mean, we have screens in the office, so I look at those. What I miss the most, though, and this is really since the pandemic, is so many people work remotely. And when I am with people in the office, it's like 10 times more efficient and 10 times more fun. So I miss that. It seems like it's sort of a level playing field because most people are working remotely, but the looking at screens, the having to call someone to ask them a simple question versus just grabbing them. Now, the good news is we're in the office sometimes. I'm there every day, though. I mean, there every day. Between there, the scoop shops, our R&D lab.
It's my last question.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your advice to entrepreneurs or a new entrepreneur?
Spend less than your revenue unless you have incredibly cheap capital and a high degree of certainty that your business is going to absolutely blow up with more capital, in a way that you can operate unprofitably and keep putting money in.
Like grabbing market share?
Yeah. Which is more of like, that's more likely to happen in tech than businesses like
Amazon.
Ours. Yeah, like we have to
did it for
build accounts with, grocery stores and build ice cream shops. So focus on profitability, almost overgrowth, because owning your entire company, which I don't own my entire company, I still control it, and Pete, Laura, and I own the majority. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. And I think we've been fed this story for the last 10 years of being able to grow your CPG business into $1 billion valuation in 5-6 years, and it's really hard. That's like 1 out of 50,000, or 1 out of 100,000, or 1 out of 1,000,000. So I think like don't go for that dream unless you have a really defined way of achieving it. But I think if you're going for that, because I see so many CPG companies come, and you can almost like smell it. You're like, yeah, there's some passion there, but it's just like they heard the 73 podcasts about the early movers, the people who the Kind bars, which, and by the way, that took a lot of work and took a lot longer than people think. So it's really like focus on profitability, try to not sell equity if you don't have to, and enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the journey. And sort of related to this is, I often think, like you see these businesses blow up and you say, oh, it's an overnight success. And it's almost never an overnight success. Raising Cane's, my brother lives in Burbank, California. They opened there 2 years ago. I hadn't heard of him before. And he said, this place, Raising Cane's, has, lines of cars, and the police have closed the lane of traffic. They're doing so well. And, then they signed leases in New York City, and they're in Times Square. And my first thought was, oh my God, these guys are blowing up overnight. The company was founded like 40 years ago. It's like it takes so long.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
I think it takes long to make something sustainable.
Yeah.
It's almost like growing, hardwood. It's like harder. It grows slower, but it's going to be safer. It's going to be more secure.
Yeah. I got 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Your biggest fear?
Okay, more positives. My biggest fear would be not being awesome,
The product sucking.
Growing in a way where like suddenly we gave up too much control on product development and supply chain, and the product wasn't as good. But we found with all departments, whether it's innovation, supply chain, store development, it's a process of stepping away and stepping back in, leaning out, leaning in, leaning out, leaning in. Store development, for example, is something that we've given up a lot of control on. And we used to build stores for a lot less money than we're doing now, even when you adjust for construction costs going up. And it's impossible to grow and do that and have that, founder touch and obsession over every single expense, and, finding the cheapest way to buy a stainless steel table, off this website and having it shipped directly to the store. But we found too is we can still do a little bit of that, right? And when we do a little bit of that, people see the way we do things. It might give them ideas on how to do things. So, yeah, just like continuing to, know when to lean out. Because if Pete, Laura, and I were in charge of building all the stores still, like, there'd be no business. I mean, it's not possible.
Yeah.
There's just not enough time. So you have to lean in, lean out. But, for example, we just found an opportunity in California, and it's what we call a flip, where it's an existing ice cream shop, and we think we can move really fast. And Peter and Laura and I were texting as I was on the plane yesterday, and they were going to meet this new architect at that store tomorrow, and we think we can do just cosmetic stuff and not do permits. But it was so invigorating. It was like, guys, it's like we're 10 years ago again. We're doing everything ourselves. But I'd be really excited if we do kind of do that, and then the team says, whoa, they just did that so much faster. What can we learn from them? And we have a lot to learn from our team, because they build these big disciplined processes that will hopefully allow us to start opening, 50 stores a year in the next couple of years.
What's your biggest hope?
Biggest hope. Biggest hope. Biggest hope is that we are the biggest super premium ice cream company in the world by 2035.
There we go.
That's such a
That's a good one.
ambitious, sort of greedy one, though.
Who's number one right now?
Either Ben & Jerry's or Haagen-Dazs.
Okay, good. Wow.
That's a hard hope, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's gonna get.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna
We'll
happen.
try.
Yeah. Ben, thank you so much for telling me about yourself.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chris.
Thank you. So that's the first time I've ever done an in-person recording.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So much better, huh?